Welcome back, friends. So glad to be having you join me today for today's podcast. This is going to be the first in at least a two-part, probably longer series on the subject of how we can ground ourselves. Why this is relevant to right now is that going into fall, as I've mentioned on previous podcasts, we are in a transition season. We experience really windy days. We experience drastic temperature changes. We experience some days are rainy, some days are super dry. And all of that sends our system into an upheaval. The other reason this is really relevant right now is because with COVID and the election and all of the things that are happening in the world, I think we can all agree that 2020 is a little extra. So knowing a few things to help to ground yourself can help you to have a more balanced response to these things rather than a knee-jerk reaction. And when we live intentionally with the principles that we learn from traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, we find that these types of grounding practices can also give us much greater leverage with our health and wellness. So today I'm going to give you 3 tips. There's going to be a whole bunch more coming on future podcasts about how to ground yourself. First of all, how do you know if you need grounding? Well, you may be feeling anxious. You may be feeling super stressed out. You might be feeling like you're floating outside of your body. Physically, you might be noticing things like upset digestion, especially diarrhea. You may be noticing that you have a lot of excess tension. You may be noticing that you feel like you can't fully get into your breath when you're breathing. And on a more emotional, spiritual level, or even mental, you might be finding that you're dealing with a lot of racing thoughts that you can't slow down. You might be struggling with mental focus. You may be struggling with irritability. That is a sure sign that you need to focus on grounding. So when we're grounding, what we're essentially doing is we're taking the excess element in this season, which is the combination of air and space. So think of windy days, think of being exposed, think of being insecure. And we are balancing it by bringing in the opposite element, which is earth element. And there's so many ways to do this. I've mentioned some on previous podcasts, but I'm going to review them again today. And then in coming episodes, I'm going to give you a few new things to chew on when it comes to grounding. The first way that we can ground ourselves is with our routines. Now, if you're homeschooling right now, you might be finding this to be extra challenging because you have a whole bunch of extra things in your routine that aren't normally there. So when I say routine, this doesn't necessarily mean that we're adding in a whole bunch of things. It might just be that we're standardizing what we're already doing a little bit more. When we're in summer, we're typically not as scheduled. We have longer days. We're traveling more. We tend to not have as much of a routine. When we go into fall, if we continue to have that haphazard schedule, we're going to find that we're really struggling with constantly feeling behind, disorganized, and those types of feelings are going to contribute to the sense of feeling ungrounded, right? So the recommended advice going into fall from Ayurveda is to kind of standardize your routine, meaning that you're going to keep your waking times and you're going to sleep times at consistent times. You're going to try to keep your meal times at consistent times. Maybe just doing that alone would be enough for you to think about right now. But it may be of extreme benefit at this time to really get into a regular routine, not just for yourself, but for your family, so that we can all together work on tackling the extra challenges that we have in front of us at this time. Getting into a routine can also include things like adding in some meditation and some prayer, figuring out when you're going to do your movement every day. It can look like having a routine in the evening where you turn off your devices, you put on some wonderful soft music, maybe some essential oils in your diffuser for relaxation, and you get into a more relaxed state before you go to bed so that you are increasing your quality of sleep and your quality of rest. Any of these things, or any routine really that works for you, even things that you've done in the past that you've gotten out of the habit of doing, now is the time to get back into the habit of doing those things. I was talking to my husband on Sunday of this week, and I was saying, there is something really beautiful about having a discipline to do the things that you don't emotionally feel like doing. because when you can show up and you can do the thing even when you don't feel like it, you will find that fruitfulness comes of that is unexpected. Okay, so whatever routine looks like for you, getting into that routine can help you to feel grounded because it helps you to feel a little bit more in control of your time, your space, your intentions, what's happening. I actually have a planner. It's called an Evertide planner. It's designed by a friend of mine here in North Dakota, and I love it for creating healthy routines. So every Monday morning, you might choose to do this on Sunday night. I get to sit down and I get to meal plan my week. I get to decide what are the 5 healthy habits that I want to focus on every day of the week so that I get to check them off. And then I get to choose a focus for each day of the week. So on Monday, it's a podcast. On Wednesday, it's that I'm teaching a course, so on and so forth. And it just helps me to get my mind wrapped around what is happening in the week, but also to live really intentionally with the time that I have and to get the most out of it, which I think is really what so many of us are looking for, is to just have a rich experience in the time that we have here on this planet. Not only that, but setting those intentions ahead of time makes it almost automatic in my brain when I do need to do those healthy habits. There's no negotiation that's happening because I've already decided at the beginning of the week what's going to happen. And then once I make that larger plan, I'm able to break that down then into each day, how I want to accomplish my tasks in that day, the amount of time I want to allot to those things, and then focus on what is most important to me, what my joys and what my stressors were, and what I learn every day. So highly recommend the Evertide planner to get into those routines. I don't have any tie to that company. You can find them on Instagram, Evertide. Just look up Evertide and you'll find it. Really, really wonderful 3 months at a chunk to look at those plans and then how to break them down into the actions. And it's not that we want to be rigid with our routines, right? Like rigidity can also become its own stressor in a way, but this is more of like, let's have a routine and be intentional with how we're showing up and how we're spending our time. Okay, so that is our tip number 1. Tip number 2 is essential oils for grounding. Okay, so essential oils for grounding, I touched on this a little bit in my last podcast, so this is going to be a little bit of review if you heard my last podcast on essential oils for fall, but I want to expand on it a little bit. With the sense of grounding, what we're talking about is earth element, and what grows in the earth? Well, roots, right? I don't know of anything else that grows in the earth besides roots when it comes to plants. So we're going to be looking at essential oils and also carrier oils that have a strong relationship with the earth. Essential oils that are going to fall into this category are root-based, obviously. So we have things like vetiver, jatamansi, if you can get your hands on it or if you have some. Ginger is a really great one. Perhaps you can think of others. These are going to be very earthy, heavier smelling essential oils. They're going to be ones that stick around longer. Patchouli would be another choice here, or any essential oil that you personally find grounding. So the thing about aromatherapy is that it's very personal and individual. We all have different associations with different scents, and those scents also tend to provoke memories, both positive or negative. So just because I say that patchouli is something that might be a choice, if you have a negative reaction to patchouli, then that is not going to be a grounding essential oil to you. However, perhaps for you, something like cedar would be grounding instead. It brings you into more of a sacred state of mind, helps to center you in your body. Then that's wonderful. So take my suggestions, but add on whatever else for you that is a scent that helps you to feel more embodied, more present in the moment. That's what being grounded is all about. Bonus, if you use any of those scents in your routines, especially in your meditation or your prayers that you're doing, your yoga practice, your movement practices, any of those things, that helps to reinforce what you're doing with the healthy routines. And it's not just a pie in the sky idea. There's actually science behind this, that associating a scent with a healthy habit can actually help you to use that scent to provoke healthy behavior the next time you need to do it. So by incorporating some of these grounding scents when you're doing your grounding routines, you're actually doubling down, or in another way you could think of it as that you're creating an exponential result rather than just an additive result. So highly recommend incorporating some of those essential oils for fall that are grounding at this time if you're a person that is feeling ungrounded. Carrier oils can also play into this. So sesame oil is a carrier oil that I find to have a little bit more of an earthy quality to it, almost an earthy scent to it. That would be a wonderful choice for fall. It also has a slightly warming sense to it. Castor oil would be another carrier oil. It's very heavy, it's very viscous. To me, that represents a lot of things about earth element. Think rock, stone, dirt. These are heavy things, right? So castor essential oil, besides being emollient, wonderful for dry skin this time of year, can be a wonderful carrier oil for your blends, your serums, and that type of thing. All right. So those are our first two tips. The first one is to get into a routine. The second one is to focus on some grounding essential oils. And the third one is very intuitive, but maybe not something that we're always in touch with. We think of the fall vegetables as something that we use to decorate with, right? So outside of my door right now, I have a beautiful bundle of grasses and cattails, and next to that, I have pumpkins and squash and gourds. These are beautiful, beautiful plant allies that we have for that visual aspect of our life, which is very important and which is in and of itself very grounding. But sometimes I think we forget that these were also given to us at this time of year. This is the time of year where we have just harvested our root vegetables like potatoes, sweet potatoes, also the things that grow on the ground. So pumpkins, squash, those tarts, you typically eat gourds, but pumpkins and squash are examples of those. All of these things have a close relationship to the earth, and so from a traditional standpoint, we would understand them as containing a lot of earth element. They are heavier, heartier foods compared to a lot of the foods that we eat in the summer, such as the water content density of something like a watermelon or a cucumber. These have less water content in them, more earthy content in them. They themselves are grounding, and then very often the way that we cook them is also going to be grounding. It's going to be supportive for digestion at this time. You don't usually eat raw pumpkin or raw squash. If you do, I want to hear about it. How are you doing that? Why are you doing that? How does it work? But if for most of us, we're going to be cooking the pumpkins, the squash, we're going to be cooking the root vegetables of various kinds, beets, potatoes, and so on and so forth. And when we cook the foods, we're actually helping to ground their energies and help to ground their energies into our body by making them a little bit more digestible. And speaking from a chakra standpoint, then, our lowest two chakras are going to be the ones that are most unsettled when we feel ungrounded. We might not feel even like we're in our bodies at all right now at this time of year. And so when we nourish our bodies with those nutrient dense foods that are also the earthy element foods, it helps to calm that digestion down and to ground the digestion into the large intestine and our process of elimination, which is something that for a lot of us gets compromised in the transitional seasons of fall and spring. So incorporating those beautiful fall vegetables is a wonderful way to incorporate more of that earth element, and even the process, the ritual of making something out of those foods, cutting up the pumpkin, taking out the seeds, maybe roasting the seeds, scraping out the insides, taking off the skin, roasting it, pureeing it, whatever you're doing with it. Maybe you're making it into a wonderful bread. I love Thai pumpkin soup. That's what I tend to go for at this time of year. So nourishing, so wonderful, so flavorful, so easy on the digestion, also including a lot of spices that are also going to be not only compatible with the flavor of our fall vegetables, but also themselves supportive to our digestion. And in so doing, they will be supportive to helping us to ground back into our body. So those are some really simple, easy things that pretty much anybody can do to ground themselves at this time of year. But this is only part one, so be looking for part two, possibly part three in coming episodes. I hope this was helpful to you and inspiring to you. As always, it's my goal to help you live a more holistic lifestyle with ease. And please comment, like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. And I always appreciate those 5-star reviews. We'll see you next time.